Hello, my wonderful, beautiful friends, guys. Welcome back to our /EntitledPeople, where people truly believe the world revolves around them and who cares about anyone else, right? And in today's episode, entitled Karens are learning that actions do have consequences, and tantrums are being thrown. Karens are getting embarrassed. Some of these get wild, guys. I hope you enjoy the lineup today, and remember, this voice should only be on the Dark Fluff YouTube channel, nowhere else. Let's dive in. My night job is at a specialty pet food and treat store, and we also offer grooming and a self-wash grooming station where you can come in and wash your pet. I had a couple come in with their son who was about 9 years old to wash their dog. The couple goes in to wash their dog and they left their son to wander around the store. As I'm by myself, I didn't notice that he was unsupervised until they had gone in and started washing their dog. I spent 15 minutes finishing my baking, taking care of customers, and following this kid around to clean up after him. The kid was grabbing random toys and playing with them, and then setting them down wherever he wanted. He was also bouncing all the tennis balls and grabbing the leashes off the shelf and pretending they were lassos. But not only that, he was also bothering my customers, asking them random questions as they tried to shop. After I asked him 3 times to stop messing around with things and other people, he went over to our baked treats table. At this point, I knocked on the self-wash door and I asked the parents to please bring their son into the wash with them, or let him sit in the car while they finish. They just told me they were almost done and that their son was never a problem. This is when I explain he was disturbing other customers and playing with random items, that I was having to clean up after him. And the woman just looked me right in the eyes and she said, "Yeah, so what? That's your job." I just told her my job's to run the store, not to babysit customers' kids. She just rolls her eyes at me and said they're almost done. I come back to the sales floor and I kid you not, the kid had smashed 3 cakes and a whole bunch of treats, as well as snapped a bunch of bully sticks and other dried treats in half. He just smiles and bounces off, and I just start to gather and ring up the items. The parents come out of the self-wash and I add that to the transaction. And I tell them their total's $149.76. Upon hearing that, their mouths drop and the guy says, "What? $150 to wash my effing dog? Are you serious?" I say to him, "No sir, the self-wash was $16. The rest is to cover what your son destroyed." The mom says her son didn't destroy anything, and I gesture to the pile of broken cakes and treats, and I tell her, "Actually, ma'am, he did. He broke all of this after I asked you to please supervise him." She then starts arguing, saying that I broke them on purpose to spite her child, all because I didn't like having her son in the store. And I just thought to myself, yes, because I love baking a bunch of stuff just to destroy it. You got me. I had a feeling that this was going to be the reaction, so I already had the video from our cameras ready to go on my phone to show her. I say to her, "This isn't your son walking over to our table and smashing those cakes and treats. This isn't your son going to the bully bar and snapping all the treats in half." She didn't say anything for a second, and then she told me she didn't think she should have to pay for them. I told her that her child broke them after I asked her to watch him or let him sit in the car, so it's their responsibility to cover our losses. She then asked to speak to the manager, and she was very disappointed when I pointed to my name tag that has the word manager under my name. I say to her, "You're speaking to a manager, ma'am. Is there anything else I can help you with today? If not, your total is $149.76. She did glare at me, but she put her card in and paid, and then they left, looking like they were screaming at the kid the whole way to the car. You know what? At least they did own up to it and paid for the broken dog treats, because it could have easily gone into a full-blown Karen tantrum with the cops getting called, right? And this person comments a similar situation. They say, When I was a teenager, I worked at a round table pizza in a bad neighborhood. One night, this family comes in, 2 toddlers in tow, and they proceed to drink 2 pitchers of beer at a booth, leaving their kids to wander around under the tables. I was working the pizza oven, which is a big conveyor belt heated to about 500 degrees Fahrenheit. Out of the corner of my eye, I see one of the kids wandering towards the oven, hands out, ready to touch a scalding hot pizza that came out of the oven. My babysitting instincts kicked in, and I just scooped the kid up before he got hurt, and he starts screaming, of course. It took a minute, but the mom got up and she starts screaming at me that I hurt her kid. I was trying to explain that I was protecting him, but she wouldn't let me. She rips the kid out of my arms with so much force that I fell backwards, and then she screamed at me to never touch her son again. This is when the manager came over and asked what was going on. The mom tried to say that I hit her son. She wouldn't even let me talk. Thankfully, my manager was like, I guarantee my employee didn't do that. I saw your kid wander into the employee area from the cameras in the back. You're lucky my employee thought quickly. I'll let you finish your meal, but you're lucky if I don't forward the footage of you assaulting my minor employee after she protected your unsupervised child to CPS. The lady's mouth was just on the floor. She left, and I never saw that family again. So to preface, this story takes place in August of 2021. I was 20 years old and I was working as a server in a high-end restaurant at a casino in the US. About 9 months earlier, I sustained a level 3 ankle sprain that left me pretty damaged, including a severed nerve, plantar fasciitis, walking issues, and a few other things on the list. Due to this, I was given a monstrous prosthetic brace to help me out. It extended from the top of my knee to the heel of my foot. One day, I had this older couple in their 70s, if I had to guess, seated in my section. The wife was an angel. However, the husband kept finding things to complain about before he'd even ordered his food. The music was too loud, the silverware wasn't clean enough, his water had too much ice and tasted weird. Just one of those entitled customers. Anyways, the food runner delivered his salad without dressing, and the man had beckoned me over to let me know what a travesty it was that he didn't have his dressing. I let him know it would be no problem to go get it, but it would be a couple of minutes as the dining room and kitchen were a minute walk from each other. He let me know that this was okay and that he just needed his salad dressing. It took about 3 minutes to go to the kitchen, get the dressing, and return to the table. Upon returning to his table, I saw that the guy had eaten his salad without the dressing, the whole salad. He then looked at me and said, "You are such a useless server, you know that? You should have run to go get it." With pure rage and anger coursing through my body, I took a deep breath, pulled up my pant leg up to past my ankle, and I said, "Sorry, sir. I just got this prosthetic leg and I haven't figured out how to run yet." And let me tell you, the look on his face was a mix between horror, shock, and embarrassment, and his wife was pure embarrassment. I felt awful for bending the truth, but the look on this guy's face made everything worth it. He then asked me why I needed a prosthetic leg, and I told him it wasn't something I was comfortable talking to a stranger about. He left it at that. I filled their waters, made sure they had everything they needed, and went on my merry way. After that conversation, he didn't complain about another thing, and he tipped 25% of the bill. To this day, I still have issues with my ankle and walking, but I will say that the look on that man's face never fails to put a smile on my face on the days that walking's the hardest. In my opinion, OP is such a hero for pulling that move and embarrassing the guy, and the guy deserved every bit of embarrassment. And you know, on the way home, the wife probably gave him so much crap for that. Like, what have I told you about saying stupid things to servers? That said, I also love how he tried to spite OP by eating a dry salad so he can complain. Some people, I tell you. And if you enjoyed that post, this next one also involves a prosthetic. So for some context, I had my right leg amputated below the knee 5 years ago after suffering my whole life with a congenital bone defect in my right leg. I use a prosthetic and I get on well with it a lot of the time. I also use a pin lock prosthetic and I have to use prosthetic socks to bulk my stump out because the silicone liner makes my stump hot and makes it shrink. Anyways, on Saturday, I was at my local pub. My partner and I are friends with the owner, so we were sat with them and some other friends, happily getting drunk and singing karaoke. I was looking great in a pinstripe jumpsuit and chunky heeled boots. Every time I go get a drink, these two guys would try engaging me in conversation. Now, you know how you can tell that someone's a complete a-hole? These guys gave off that vibe before they even tried speaking to me. And after that, every time they opened their mouths, something stupid came out. I can't really remember what, but it was enough for me to ignore their presence. At about midnight, I was coming in from a smoke, and unfortunately, I had to pass them to get back to my table. I was limping because I needed to add an extra sock to my stump. As I'm passing them, one of the guys says very condescendingly to me, "Aw, what's the matter? Do your ankles hurt?" He said that with a smug grin on his face. Without missing a beat, I turned slightly towards them and I lifted up my right trouser leg without saying a word and I show him my prosthetic. I then drop my trouser leg back down. I just heard him say, "Oh crap, I'm so sorry," as he turns towards the bar and tries to melt into it. His friend went white as a ghost too. I just walked off, still not having said a word to them. And the thing is, I've been dying for something like this to happen ever since I got my prosthetic, and I was daydreaming about what to do if it ever happened. It only took 5 years, but it finally happened, and it was amazing. So I regularly go to a hair salon to get my extensions done. The staff is super friendly and they're always doing a great job. They have a 5-star Google rating and they've been regularly awarded as top salon in a city of 3.6 million. You get the idea. They objectively provide great service. So that said, a couple of weeks ago, I was at the salon getting my extensions fixed. My hairdresser, who's a super lovely woman, told me that she's in a bit of a bad mood since a customer didn't show up for her appointment earlier that day without canceling. Doing extensions can take quite some time, and that's a lot of money lost for the salon. She also told me that the customer's a bit difficult at times. I understood how much of an understatement that was when the customer actually showed up 4 hours late and demanded to be served. The owner of the salon told her they really don't have the capacity to do her hair, since the slots for the rest of the day are booked. Karen then starts aggressively rambling about bad customer service and how they should show some flexibility. Meanwhile, I was just sitting in my chair, my eyes rolling so hard they nearly fell out of my head. After 5 minutes of discussion, the owner of the salon agreed to do her hair himself. Karen seems to be satisfied by this VIP treatment. She sat down in the chair next to me and she proceeded to start bitching how the last time they did her hair wrong, how the quality of her hair was crap, and the color was off. It wasn't. She just went on and on for a full hour. It was exhausting to say the least. The salon owner just kept smiling and doing the work while taking the verbal abuse. In my head, I'm thinking, why? Why do you let her treat you this way? After a while, Karen decided that she needs to take a smoking break, and she said, mandatory smoke break, and she went outside for a bit. So I asked the salon owner, whom I've known for 3 years by now, dude, why the hell do you not throw her out? Hearing me ask that, he grins at me and he says, "Oh, that's fine. I regularly charge her 2 times the actual rate for the hair and service. I call it the bitch tax." We had a good laugh, and I was just happy that Karen suffers consequences for her Karenness without realizing it. It was very satisfying. Okay, who else loves that? Not the a-hole tax, but the bitch tax. And seriously, I'm shocked at Karen even paying that price. Like, she must be loaded to not question why the work was so expensive all the time. And speaking of questioning things, this next Karen gets quite pushy, guys, and she learns a big lesson. Listen to this one. So this isn't truly my story, but I was there to witness it. I have a friend who I usually meet up with once a week, as we typically go hiking, and on some days, it's just a light walk around the park. My friend also has a 10-year-old daughter, her only kid, and this week, her daughter was recently recovering from the flu, so we decided to have a light walk around the local park so she could get some fresh air after being sick. Not terribly long into the walk, as kids do, she decides that she's too tired to walk. So we all sit on a bench while she runs around the grass for a bit. My friend and I are sitting there chatting, keeping an eye on her daughter, who's collecting and playing with rocks. Eventually, this older woman comes by us as we're talking, and she comments on how cute her daughter is. My friend thanks her, and they briefly chat about their own kids, until she asks if my friend has any more kids. My friend says no, and this is when the tone shifts. This older woman then goes on how it's so sad that friend's daughter is all alone, and how she should give her kid a sibling. My friend politely but curtly tells her how no more kids will ever happen, and she's just fine, thank you. Well, that's not good enough for this Karen. She starts going on how awful of a mother she is for depriving her kid of siblings, and how the only child often struggles more in life, yada yada yada. My friend's daughter at some point runs over to hand her mom another shiny rock she's found, and this older woman takes the opportunity to ask her daughter directly if she wants siblings, and this is how the conversation went. The older woman says, "Sweetie, your mom says she doesn't want to give you someone to play with. How would you feel about having a little sister or brother? Wouldn't you want some more company?" My friend's daughter just stands there not knowing what to say, and the older woman pushes on and says, "Tell your mother that you'd love a brother or sister to play with." And that's when my friend's daughter says, "I don't want my mommy to die, thank you." The older woman went speechless so fast, and she just stared at her daughter until she ran off again. My friend eventually decides to chime in with, "I had to be resuscitated giving birth to her, and I had to have my tubes tied so I wouldn't die by having another kid. My daughter's asked me many times before for a sibling, but I informed her of what happened, and she would rather have her mom alive than a sibling." The woman decided to quickly scurry off after that. Turns out, though, that it works out great to have your kid tell entitled people you don't want your mom to die when they're pressured to have another one. We all got a great laugh out of it. Yeah, I think it's probably safe to say that Karen will never push that on people ever again. At least that's what we hope, right? Like, you never ever know what some people are going through behind closed doors, and some people are far too invested in other people's fertility and family planning. And to turn around and try to manipulate a child into the conversation, like, get out of here, Karen. I'm glad it backfired. So I'm a wheelchair user, and the thing with wheelchairs is they're considered extensions of our bodies, and touching a wheelchair without permission is a no-no. Moving someone's wheelchair without asking is an even bigger no-no. I'd explained to my one classmate again and again that all of this was rude, inappropriate, and even harassment, that he kept touching my chair or moving me without asking. When I told him not to, he not only kept doing it, but he was insistent that he had the right to do so, as sometimes, quote, "you are in the way." I'd even gone as far as to illustrate the issue to him by getting permission to touch his shoulder or elbows and moving him out of the way. This didn't dissuade him or change his entitled insistence that he had the right to touch my chair whenever he wanted when I told him no. And this was over the course of most of a college semester. One day, he touched my chair again and he wouldn't move his hand when I politely asked him to stop. He refused to let go, and again, he insisted he wasn't doing anything wrong and it was no different than putting his hand on a table and that he had the right to do so. He just kept saying to me it wasn't a big deal, and he even went as far as to start wiggling the chair back and forth. I had had enough that he continued to touch my wheelchair, so I turned my chair around lightning fast. I grabbed his stunned hand hard enough to hopefully bruise him. I pulled him down as harshly as I could, and I slapped him in the face as hard as I could. My classmates heard the slap and his pained yelp, and they turned to look at us. He then had the nerve to scream and run to the professor to whine that I had grabbed him out of nowhere and hit him. He just kept whining about it to the professor that I be punished for assaulting him, only for the professor to ask what happened. When the full story came out of why I hit him, the professor kind of shrugged and said, "Well, clearly, she told you many times to stop touching her." Mind you, I'm a very chill person and I'm never violent, as well as being patient to a fault, so I don't retaliate nearly ever or easily, but frankly, this was self-defense, pure and simple. In any case, the whole class had heard me explain time and time again to not touch me or my chair and why it was inappropriate. At the end of class that day, I got a lot of high fives, and he kept his distance from me after that. Good prudence, frankly. Yeah, I'm 100% on OP's side for this one. Like, she told him over the course of a full semester to stop, but he kept doing it. And honestly, I'm surprised she was that patient. But the self-entitlement, right? It's a wheelchair. You're basically the same thing as a table. I should be able to touch you or wheel you around. My goodness. And once again, I don't condone violence, and I would never tell anyone to hit someone. But in OP's shoes, I understand completely. Like, even the nicest people have a line you should not cross. So when I was 7 years old, my mom passed away from cancer. Of course, not everyone in the school knew this. I usually gave people the courtesy of not knowing before letting loose. I was also the kind of kid that never got pissed at mama jokes. I knew they were usually in good fun and didn't actually mean anything, usually turning into a dead mom joke with my response. For example, somebody would say something like, "Your mom is so big, she got arrested for carrying 50 pounds of crack." And I would respond, "The only thing big about my mom is the jar she's in." This usually got a few shocked faces before anybody would laugh, realizing I wasn't getting pissed about someone talking about my mother. After the initial shock of the first few jokes, everybody got into it and it became its own thing, finding new jokes to say to me to see what I would say next. That said, there was this one boy who I'll call Daniel. And the thing is, no one really liked Daniel. He was very entitled and rude, and on top of that, his father had the same reputation, so nobody really liked the family. It was basically a family of Karens. He was always causing problems with other kids, and usually was the antagonist when a fight broke out. He would tell on someone to get them in trouble after doing the same thing. He transferred to the school a few years after my mom's passing, so he had no idea. He also didn't spend enough time with my friend group to realize that the jokes they were making were about my actual mom who's no longer with us. This specific incident took place in like the 6th grade. Daniel was pissing everyone off that day, just antagonizing everyone, looking for a reaction if I had to take a guess. Eventually, I got mixed in with the insults, and he turns to me and he says something along the lines of, "Your mom was great in bed last night. She was screaming my name." All of my classmates knew that my mom was no longer around, and they knew what was coming next. They all got quiet and they looked at me. I looked at Daniel with a fake surprise, and I said, "Oh, well, you're into necrophilia then. What's it like doing it with ashes?" I don't think that would feel very good, but if that's what you like, then that's what you like. His face got so red as he realized his mess up about talking about someone's actual mom who was no longer with us. He started to backtrack, saying that he meant to say my grandma, but everyone knew my family's situation and that the person I called mom was actually my grandma. And I pointed out that my grandma's also dead and he was still doing it with a dead body. And if you can recall, the kids in grade 6 are mean. They start calling him all sorts of names and saying he's horrible for saying such things about my mother, and they gave him mean nicknames. It only took a few days before his family threw a fit about him getting picked on and the teachers had to intervene. You gotta freaking love this, right? Like the person who antagonizes people gets a taste of their own medicine. And this is why I always say you should be nice to everyone. And if you guys are wondering what horrible nicknames these grade 6ers came up with, to keep it PG, the main one was Dusty Rick. Except replace the R in Rick with a D. Kids are relentless, I tell you. So I know this might sound bad, but bear with me. This happened at a family get-together that included some neighbors and family friends. I was there with my husband and 7-month-old son. We don't really attend things like this, but we made an exception because we really wanted to reconnect with a few family members who drove in from out of state. I was sitting by the pool, giving my son some of his teether snacks, and his favorites are these banana teether crackers, which is important later. A woman that I didn't recognize came up to me, and we start talking. She told me she was 6 months pregnant, and we're just talking about pregnancy, hormones, babies, and I felt like it was an overall normal conversation. I find out she's the girlfriend of a distant cousin, which is why she was invited. Well, out of the blue, she starts going off on a tangent about processed foods, and she was saying that teethers are essentially poison for my son. He starts to get loud when I disagreed, and that's when she reaches over as if she was gonna take the snacks out of my son's hand. That's when I stood up, and I let her know that I was uncomfortable with the direction this conversation had taken, and I excused myself and my son to go find somebody I knew, or my husband. I had just found my husband who was inside talking to his siblings, and I start telling him about the crazy conversation outside when this woman came up from behind me and she snatches my son's teether snack out of his hand. We all stood there in shock for a second, and then she goes, "You'll thank me for this. It's really what's best for your baby." And that's when she shoves the snack into her mouth, baby slobber and everything. She chewed for a few seconds and then sort of froze and then asked if it was banana. When I said yes, she starts panicking and shouting that she was severely allergic to bananas. I really couldn't help it, but I start cracking up. Everyone starts rushing around trying to help her, but I was so focused on getting my son calmed down from having his snacks stolen by an adult. To me, it was instant karma, so me and my husband used the chaos to sneak out without saying anything to anyone. She ends up having to go to the ER, but was ultimately okay. However, my reaction was not missed by others, and we've had a few people reach out to call me a horrible person for laughing at a pregnant woman who happened to be having a medical emergency. They're distant relatives, so it really doesn't impact us, but in my mind, I'm thinking, am I the a-hole in this situation? I really don't feel guilty for laughing at a woman who literally stole food out of the hands of my baby. Listen guys, I think this is a case of play stupid games, win stupid prizes, and OP's not the a-hole in this situation. My question is, how in the world does Karen function with that logic, right? It's not good enough for your baby, but let me eat it, which essentially will feed my baby. Like, what in the world, guys? And this person comments, "This is why context matters." Yes, it is an a-hole move to laugh at someone having a medical emergency. However, when it's because they were an a-hole to a literal baby, then laughing's not only okay, but I believe demanded. Guys, you know the deal. Let me know your thoughts on this. All I can say is I'm glad Karen's okay, and hopefully she learned her lesson. And that, my friends, brings us to another end of our slash entitled people. Guys, I hope you enjoyed today's stories. If you did, hit that thumbs up. And if you're not subscribed, consider subscribing so you don't miss these crazy stories. And if you missed the last episode on the channel, it's an r/malicious compliance episode where bad bosses are getting taught lessons they won't ever forget. Guys, go check it out if you haven't, and myself and Stevie Boy will see you guys in the next one. We love you.